All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with my guy, George Midgett. George and I worked together at the University of Kansas for a year, got to know each other, working on a few projects and playing a lot of noon ball together. George, what's going on, my man?
What's going on, D Stark? How you doing?
I'm great, man. Living large in Wisconsin this summer. We got a Bucks championship. Brewers in first place. Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay. Life is good.
As a Chicago fan, I hate all of the things that you just said right now.
Understandably so. Understandably so. It's a tough day for the Cubs. They've traded Javi Baez to the Mets. I believe Rizzo went to the Yankees yesterday, and saw something on Twitter about Chris Bryant potentially being unloaded by the end of the day as well. So thoughts and prayers.
It is what it is. I would say that I'm hurt, but you've kind of expected this. Aging core. As you just saw the first Bucks championship in your lifetime. You've seen more of the down rebuilding part. For me, it's very familiar to the time where the Bulls, started to do their last dance and started to fade out. So it sucks, but you hope that the foundation is at least secure, that it's not going to be that long of a rebuild.
Absolutely. They're getting a haul of prospects in these deals. So I have a feeling that there's a visionary in that front office. And within the next few years, we'll see the Cubs start to climb the ranks a little bit in the Central once again.
Let's hope so. Hopefully this is just a one down period and those prospects actually pan out.
Yeah, absolutely. At least half of them. If you hit on half, right, you're in good shape for
right.
sure. But yeah, like I said, we work together at KU. You have an extensive history, a lot of experience working in intercollegiate athletics, and just wanted to kind of pick your brain on your thoughts of working in that world. So many people dream of working in sports and college athletics. Some see that to fruition. Others never really get the opportunity. So what's that experience been like you throughout the past decade or so?
Well, it's interesting. I was fortunate enough to start, very young. I started my first job at Vandy when I was 23. And I had a few student athletes who were even older than me. And so to navigate growing up as a person, period, and then being able to do a job and do it effectively at a Power 5 institution, was it was a harrowing experience, to say the least. But it was one of those that, once you start doing the job, you fall in love with it. And so you realize you have a greater purpose. People always asked what I did when I first started. For those who don't know, I started off in compliance. When I first started, I used to tell people my job was to make sure that my school didn't end up on the bottom line for negative reasons. And so my job is to make sure that I did everything impossible to educate my staff and student athletes on things to not get in trouble. But throughout time, as anything, you evolve. And I realized my passion lied with the student athletes more than anything, and helping build them up, because I was once them. I'm a former student athlete. I played baseball at Fisk University, which is right down the street from Vandy. And when I got out of school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I didn't want student athletes to go through the same thing that I went through. And so I realized a lot of times students would only be talking to me when they were either in trouble or about to leave the university. And again, if you can affect that on the front end, you should do so. And so I started to volunteer, and then here we are.
I love it, man. And I don't think I've heard a lot about your college baseball career, but it'd be fun to dive into that a little bit as well. But, compliance is one of those areas in athletics that I think a lot of people, you get kind of nervous about. You don't want to interact with people in compliance. There's some stigmas about it being dry and kind of boring, but that isn't always the case. There's a lot of really fun people who work in that area. I know our friend Paul Pierce spent a lot of time in compliance, and it's a really vital aspect of the entire athletic operation.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. I was lucky enough. My boss at the time, the now AD at Vandy, Candace Lee, I was able to grow with her. With her being a former student athlete and me being a former student athlete, we both had a different perspective of what it looked like from the other side. And we often try to not be the no police, which compliance is, often misidentified as. We wanted to say, we want to help you. We want to make sure that if we're saying no, this is why we're saying no. And we tried to break a lot of those stigmas. And I think that carried over pretty well. You know, we didn't have a lot of violations, but with any school, you're going to have violations, but we didn't have a lot of violations. And the rapport that we had with our coaches, with our players, I think went a long way in building up that trust, that rapport, so that we could really, you know, affect change. And as we all know, rules aren't everything. So we wanted to make sure that, hey, if this is going on, you have the open door policy to come in and discuss anything that you needed to, so that you're not violating, you know, those rules, and so that you can stay it on the field.
Absolutely. And right now, with the name, image, likeness kind of becoming a huge aspect of what's going on in the landscape of athletics, it's going to be really unique to see how these compliance officers and departments navigate the space, because everything's about to change. Everything has changed, right? Like we went from 0 to 100 in June. There was no NIL. And in July, Emmert and the NCAA opened it up. And now it's kind of the wild, wild west.
Well, I think that you're going to get left behind if you don't change with the times. Gone are going to be the days of, you know, do it because I said so. You know, people want explanations. These student athletes are becoming savvier and savvier, and they can read up stuff on their own. They have access to the rules, and they're going to live in that gray area unless you give them reasons not to. You're also going to have a staff that is very, very up to date with social media networking. Again, you kind of mentioned to it earlier, or at least alluded to it, and the fact that I took the name, image, and likeness certification. Why? Because you have to be on up to date on these type of things to assist your student athletes, to make sure that you're helping them brand themselves. And again, you know, people from a student athlete development realm, they've been doing that for a very long time. That's really their job. But to put a more of a name on it, to really be helping them in the long run, and really setting up plans and showing them how they can effectively put themselves out for not just potential sponsorships, but to market themselves for jobs when they're done, I think goes a long way.
Totally agree. And we hear a lot about personal branding, and sometimes it is stigmatized. People think it's talked about too much, and it's always focused on yourself and the athlete and not the organization, program, and teams. Can you talk about personal branding and why it is so important?
Well, I think it's important because, again, a lot of times when you are going for positions, sometimes your name might be in the room before you're in the room, and you want it to speak, you know, what's your name saying when you're not in the room. You know, how are people talking about you when you're not around? What impression have you left? It was a while ago, but I took some assessments, and one of the assessments was, you know, you had to write down all the stuff you thought about yourself, you know, and how you pictured yourself. And then you had to give it to 5 different coworkers to see what they thought about you. And, you know, it's a sobering thought when you get those assessments back, and what you think about yourself and what other people think about you do not line up. And so it makes you really think about, what am I putting out there into the universe? And so, again, you have to be intentional about what you want to put out. Is it something where you are, you know, you say, hey, I want to be kind, but, you know, there's images of you out there, you know, trash talking on the court, or, you know, saying, you know, hurtful things to people. That's not really coming off as a kind person. You know, what are you doing to show that you are kind? Again, what do you want to convey to the world? And so sitting down and getting down to the brass tacks of everything to really figure out where you at as a core, I think goes a long way. So figuring that out, you know, having those assessments, figuring out, because sometimes you may not know. You know, me at 17, when I first started college, is not who I was when I was 21 when I graduated. And so throughout that time, I evolved. And so again, what is it? Where do you want to be? How do we get you to that point? And so that's where personal branding comes in, where you can really figure out where you are at the core, and then where you want to be overall.
That's beautiful, man. You talk about that assessment. Is that the 365 assessment you were alluding to?
So no, but I've done those as well. This
Okay.
is so it started off as the DISC assessment. I don't know if you've done DISC.
Oh yeah, with KU Leads. That was an awesome one.
Okay, so what are you? I'm assuming, without you telling me anything, because again, we're going off of branding, how you
Yeah,
project yourself, that you were probably an I.
definitely. That's what I always thought, is that I would be a high I, and I did
Hmm.
score pretty high there, but I scored even higher in the S, just being steady and consistent, you know, just
Hmm.
kind of showing up every day and being dependable. But
Right.
I think I view myself more as an I, but like when I talk to people like Janer and folks I'd worked with, they're like, no, you're a little bit more of an S.
Mm-hmm. Well, ironically, I think I've hit every letter. And then being in student athlete development, the last time I took it, I was a C and a D. Because I'm when you're around a lot of idea people, sometimes you just want to get to the point of how can we implement this? What is it going to take to get it done? We've done enough talking, we've done enough hugging and kumbayas. What is it that we need to do to implement everything? Because what is an idea that doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's a good point. I wish I was a higher C too. C stands for conscientiousness, I believe. So kind of just like taking care of business, like let's get some action behind these words, exactly what you're alluding to there. And then the D is a little bit more of like the dominating personality, right? Like a really strong leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you can be so wrapped up in making decisions that you don't make the decision. And so sometimes you just have to say, let's just go. And it's not always easy to do that. It's not always easy to make those tough decisions. Again, we kind of alluded to it earlier. We were talking about the trade deadline. With the Cubs, sorry to deviate, but, the Cubs were just a World Series team, a World Series championship team in 2016. It's now 2021. It's less than 5 years after they won that title, and they're dismantling the team right now, where you have some other people who might hold on to that and just say, well, this person's done this person's done that. There's a lot of good that's still here. And, then you're stuck in the same rut for years to come. The person is ripping off the Band-Aid and just, reattacking things and starting over, I think is very useful in today's workforce.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but it is 5 years already. And sometimes you can hang on to those memories and those teams and fail to continue to grow. It's kind of like Giannis had that quote a couple of weeks ago in one of the press conferences talking about, when I'm living in the past, that's my ego. When I'm living in the future, that's my pride. When I'm being right here, right now, that's humility. And I think that's exactly what the Cubs are doing. They're like, let's strip this down and build it again, because that's just the way it works. And it also works on the individual level, right? Like we're always in process and growing. And if we're just going to be complacent and say, well, I'm already as good as I need to be, then we're going to get left behind. And that has a lot to do with kind of the personal branding and personal development that we're talking about here.
Right. It's funny, and it's an interesting segue as well. It's, just thinking about collegiate athletics as a whole, you have some people who are like, this is the way we've always done it. NIL should have been in place years ago. But we're just now getting to the point, and now it's chaos because there's not, one particular way on how to regulate things. You're waiting on all these different state legislations. If they don't have state legislations, then you have to go and make your own. Some states are going to have an advantage because they have no taxes. Some are going to be, have more of an advantage because they're bigger states overall. So you're going to have student athletes not just picking schools not based on education or playing time anymore. It's going to be who can make me the most bang for my buck. And and to me, that then cheapens the game of collegiate athletics, because it doesn't come about the quality, the tradition of the school. It becomes an arms race. Well, they had newer stuff, or I was able to make $4.6 million doing this as opposed to going here and I'll only make 2 million. And it becomes a business decision. And but this is the way it's evolved to it. And you got to go ahead and move with it.
Absolutely. Adapt or die, as they say. But it is scary. Some people think this could be the beginning of the end when it comes to the NCAA and college athletics as a whole. It'll be very fascinating when we have student athletes who are making more than their coaches and the administrators. And you got somebody working in social media making $35K a year, and you got a football player who might be making that in a week. It's just all these different dynamics that we've never had to deal with in the past. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. It's just the reality and the economics of what's going on, right? Supply and demand. If there's a local business that wants to pay you $10K to come sign some autographs on a Saturday afternoon, and you're a student athlete, I would highly encourage you to do that.
Right. I would say, to your point that, I think that without the NCAA, there's going to be another form. There's going to be another association, because that's how you're going to be able to play. So the NCAA in most capacities is not going anywhere. People always think about that because they think about Division I sports, but you have Division II, you have Division III, or even on the flip side, you have you have FBS football, and then you have SCS football. So they're all different in different regions. So again, maybe you might have your Power 5 conferences that might want to break away, but again, as you can already see, it will be chaotic there as well. I mean, you're going to have one big super conference. Who does that benefit? Not very many people. But I will say that it's funny that you say, well, you have the student athletes who might be making more than their coaches. There is the whole thought that, we often say this in athletics, without the student athletes, none of us have jobs anyway. So it should be about time that they get rewarded for that anyway, because if they're not on the field doing what they're doing, we can't get paid anyway. And as far as the creatives, it gives them the avenue to actually make more money, because they can go and create side deals with these student athletes to put content out there. You're seeing a lot of creatives that are leaving universities and starting their own businesses because of that. So I think if you are creative right now, it's a special time to be in athletics. If you're a student athlete who has a story to tell, it's a special time. No matter what sport you're in, no matter what school you're in. We look at, we look at the ESPN, or we look at Fox Sports, and we see these stories, like when it comes draft time, this person came from this situation to, persevere from that. They broke their neck and now they've come back, and, it's the media telling their story. Now we get a chance to have students tell their own story. I think, that was the impetus that, we tried to emphasize, when I was at KU in creating the Jayhawk athlete movement. It was kind of in that same role where we wanted student athletes to use their platforms to express how they felt from a voter education standpoint, from a social justice standpoint, just about themselves, to put the narrative in their hands outside of whatever the media wants to portray them as.
Absolutely. And I commend the work that you guys all did there too. I mean, that was right on time, and it was highly overdue too. You kind of talked about how name, image, likeness showed up a few years later than it should have. And you feel for all the athletes that missed out on those opportunities to capitalize on when their brand is arguably the best it'll ever be, right? When you are a student athlete, fans and donors and organizations want access to you. Now, 2-3 years after you're done playing, I'm not going to say you're irrelevant, but if you didn't go pro, that demand just isn't quite there.
Right.
So it's very important, and it's great to see that it's happening right now. And I'm so proud of you for getting that certificate. And I actually have the browser pulled up right now. I'm going to do it as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. But again, I think, you just need as many tools as possible to help equip yourself with the changing of the guard. I will say that, I look at it now, if you don't have a understanding of Adobe or Canva or, some of these social media apps, you're going to get left in the dust. For myself, I want to say, if it's social media, I have an account. I have a TikTok with one reel on it, but hey, I have a TikTok. I have Snapchat, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have Twitter. And the reason why is because I may not use them all the time, but I need to be able to understand them. And I think everybody needs to as well. I look back at it, and, if you're AD and you don't know how to use these things, you're not going to be effective to your staff. You're not going to be effective to your student athletes. Yes, you might be you might hire the people to be able to do these things, but if you don't have an understanding yourself, if that person leaves, then what? If your student athletes are coming to you to talk to you about stuff and you have no idea what they're talking about it, how effective is it anyway? So again, I think everybody should go out there and get this knowledge.
Absolutely. I always think of a guy like Martin Jarmond out at UCLA and how well he utilizes Twitter and Instagram to engage his following. He's just a rock star AD. And I know behind the scenes, he's doing a lot of great work too, but his ability to promote it and have that visibility, I don't think you can really assign a value to that.
No, not at all. I think ADs, for a long time in this industry have been the unknown, faceless gods of athletics. But that doesn't work anymore. You need people who are visible, to the constituents, which are the fans, which are the donors, which are the student athletes and the staff, to really rally behind. I look at the schools that are dominating right now in this, football championship world, or just in collegiate athletics as a whole, that are actually making money. These ADs by name. You know, Even to our case, our former AD that we worked for, and Mr. Long, people knew who he was, because he was with the college football playoff. He was formerly at Arkansas, and he was a name that you said it and people would know automatically. But again, those days are changing. You need ADs to be moving and not just saying the right things, but really, putting action behind their words.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of Arkansas and name, image, likeness, our friend Terry Prentice is doing really good work there and building a really strong program that I think is getting some national recognition. So want to give him a plug. And, we've talked a lot about name, image, likeness. We've talked a lot about player development and things of that nature and KU leads. Another big aspect of this all is mental health. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more coverage revolving around that in the media. We've had some athletes, a tennis star, and most recently Simone Biles, sitting out of competitions because they just didn't have their mentals right. And I'm just wondering how you feel about all that and kind of what your take is.
Not to be too cliche, but mental health is wealth. If you're not in the right mindset, you're not in the right capacity to figure things out, you lose. And any job that wants you to be there and be mindless, and just go through the motions, you're not helping them. I firmly believe that this pandemic opened up a lot of people's eyes on effectiveness and burnout, because sitting behind a screen daily, whether it's in an office or not in an office, can be very taxing. I think the one caveat though is, when you are at home, you don't have to go and put on, dress up to be in the building. You can actually be a little bit more effective. And that's just my personal take. I know not everybody's going to agree with that. There are some things that I do love about being in an office. You can have off the cuff conversations. You can sit down with people, just because you were in the area, you connect with people more. I think our student athletes lose out with people not being in person, because that's where those conversations happen. That's where you build those relationships. But a lot of times I found that those hour-long meetings could be emails. Sometimes you meet to meet, or you meet so that we can keep an eye on things, not because you're being effective. I feel like I've been far more effective being at home than I was in any office.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really think about the student athlete standpoint on that, because I'm a huge proponent of 4-day work weeks, 2 in the office, 2 at home, hybrid style. I think that's the healthiest holistically for the employee. But then when you think about it, well, if there's a student athlete who's having a hard time, and we know their schedules are crazy with tutoring and classes and practice and all the other things that go into it, maybe they only have a 30-minute window and they want to swing by and see George on the way out of Wagnon. If it's your day where you're working from home and they miss that opportunity, that could be something that sends them down a spiral where a conversation with you could help lift their spirits, and suddenly, they're back to themselves. So I like that you pointed that out, because I think we do need to think of things from the student's perspective more often than our own.
Well, I think with everything happening with the pandemic, and then with the horrific death of George Floyd, it opened up a lot of eyes to a lot of different things. And trying to counsel students from afar was a very interesting task. But at the same time, if you've built those relationships up, it becomes somewhat easier. I would say if you're going to be in a role where you're going to be remote, you have to be available to talk at whatever time. Personally, in all my interactions with my student athletes, they have my number, so they know that they can call anytime. They FaceTime, because students love to FaceTime. I don't understand. They say the volume on the phone is better, but I don't get it. But they will FaceTime you, and you can still have those face-to-face conversations. But again, it's all about identifying, establishing relationships. If you are able to do that, you have to really get gifted people and connecting with people. You can't just have people who are there to write up procedures and do paperwork. You need people who are going to engage. And if you know how to engage, you can engage in person or you can engage over a screen like we're doing right now. But not everybody is able to do that. Not everybody is able to talk and have purpose in what they're saying. But, kind of, getting, steering it back to the original point of the conversation is that mental health, again, is wealth, but are you training the people that are working with your students, that you're working with your staff to have mental health first aid? I was, able to do that when I was at KU to get that certification. But again, that was a day program. Are you doing stuff constantly to reinforce those ideals? Are you putting stuff in? You have, I know that some companies allow you to take a day or two off a year for, mental health purposes. But intentionally, I think you should do it once a month, or maybe, you do a 3 days in, 2 days out type of situation. I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer to it. What was interesting, during the pandemic, I was able to talk to Jane and the staff about doing a rotation, whereas you would be in person for a week, and then you would be working remotely for 2 weeks. Unless, somebody you needed to come in, you would be on standby to come in to work for somebody if they couldn't. But I think that model worked well because it allowed you to be in person when you needed to, but then also take the time to take care of whatever projects that you needed outwardly. And as long as you met regularly, I felt like we met more from a virtual standpoint than we did when we were in person. So again, balancing that, but making sure that you're being effective when you have that time together.
Absolutely, man. I think flexibility is so key in our ability to evolve and just be open-minded and empathetic, right? Because
Right.
people are going through stuff. It's hard, especially in the college athletic landscape, when you're not just working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, right? As you alluded to, you kind of got to be on at all times. You might get an email, a text, a FaceTime from a coworker, from a student, and then we all have our own personal lives too. So
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. If somebody needs to take a day off of work, there should be no need to question it. You
Right.
break your leg, you go have surgery, and you recoup for a few weeks. You break your mind, and people think that you shouldn't take any time off of work or try to work through that. That's something that we have to grow through and just find a new way of operating and new paradigms to revolve around it.
Right. What's funny is you have all this legislation that's come down about concussions. And so mental health is like having a concussion. If it's not, the equilibrium isn't spinning right, you're not going to be as effective. Now you have some people who, in spite of that, can still pull it off, but that doesn't mean that they're playing as, doing their best that they can do. And, particularly student athletes, I think, have it the worst, because not only are you balancing, your play and everything on the field, you also have to take care of it in the classroom. And then you also have to be a good teammate. So you have to do it somewhat socially as well. And that can be very, very taxing because, professionals, at least they can focus on this one thing and then they can go home. But I think the student athlete has to hit all of these elements and then, stay eligible to participate, which is a lot.
It is a lot. And sometimes we forget that these athletes are pre-med or engineering. They're going after very intense, rigorous degrees on top of all the hours they're dedicating to their sport. And
Right.
maybe they have a relationship or friends that they're trying to work on as well. So just at the end of the day, I'm so inspired by student athletes, and I really miss working with and for them. So look forward to hopefully getting back to that at some point. And I know you do as well, man. This has been a fun conversation. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, or any final words of wisdom?
So I'm curious, with you navigating, you've been in the athletic realm, for a while, and, you've kind of navigated outside of it, do you see yourself trying to be back in the athletic world, or, where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, that's $1 million question right now for me. I think about it often. I kind of have an entrepreneurial mindset in a lot of ways, but also like the structure of being in an organization. I like being around people. That's where I get energy. So for me, getting back into a role probably within an athletic department is a goal of mine. I don't know if it'll be a smaller school or back at the Power 5 level. But, this summer I've really just focused on family and taking time to be around my parents who've had some health issues and visiting some friends as well that I hadn't seen in a while. So that's been really refreshing. And I finally feel like I'm ready to roll with a new job here. So I guess it's just going to be all about timing and opportunity, but definitely hope to break back in. I feel like I provide a lot of value. Also think I have a lot to work on and a lot of growth opportunities too. So hopefully somebody's willing to take a chance on me. I don't think I'm too expensive.
That's good to know. If I can help anyway, I will. But so that we're not ending on such, a more of a somber note, let's do something a little bit more lighthearted. Tell me what's on your iPod right now, the last show you binge watched, and the first place you want to go when, the pandemic is truly over.
Nice. Okay. So, man, I haven't binge watched anything probably since The Last Dance. I think that was probably the last thing that I've watched, and I've watched it a couple of times. I just think it's a great case study in leadership. So I need to put my game on TV because it's pretty much just Brewers or Bucks for me right now.
Right.
Packers right around the corner. Where I would like to go, I would love to get back to Europe. I would really like to stop back by Iceland. It's an incredible country. I also have like Switzerland and Barcelona high up there for me. Croatia would be cool. So maybe a little Euro trip at some point in time. And then the first part of the question, remind me what that was.
What's on your iPod?
Oh yeah,
An additional question is a book that
Nice.
needs to be checked out.
Nice. Yeah. So I've been listening to a lot of Glass Animals, kind of alternative. And also my buddy Mike just recommended the artist Mike. I believe he used to be Mike Stud, but now he's just Mike and has a new album out. I listened a little bit last night. It was a good vibe. But Pops has always got country music playing around the house. So it's summer in Wisconsin, so country is pretty applicable. And then in regards to the book,
I equate country and baseball. So yeah, I understand.
And then, I would say Atomic Habits by James Clear is just like a must read for everybody. It's a tremendous, personal development. Some people like to say self-help. I like development book, and it's just going to really help you maybe get a better structure and focus in your life. And then right now I'm reading Jordan B. Peterson. He's a psychologist at the University of Toronto. His second book, it's the sequel to 12 Rules for Life. It's 12 More Rules for Life.
Okay.
An antidote to chaos, trying to help you get a little more orderly and try to reach self-actualization one day. So I guess I gotta turn that back to you. What are you hot on music wise right now? What are you reading?
Okay. Music wise is interesting. I'm kind of all over the place, but I've been listening to Tyler the Creator, Snow Allegra. But generally I like to go back and listen to stuff that I haven't listened to in some time, so I'm a 90s R&B and rap guy. So I listen to a lot of that. Binge watching, I a self-professed Disney Plus person. So just finished Loki. And I am starting on, I'm going to watch Black Widow sometime this weekend. And then reading wise, I've read quite a few things. I would say Scott O'Neill's Be Where Your Feet Are, John Gordon's The Energy Bus. I'm with you too, Atomic Habits. But I've kind of cheated because I've been listening to audiobooks to go along with reading it, because sometimes when you hear it, it kind of resonates a little bit more. I've also been, amping up and doing more some graphic design stuff, because again, I want to bring it back, that element to student athletes. And the more I know, the more I can help them with that. And I really forgot the other question, because even though I said it, I forgot it was 4 things.
Oh man, because you're talking about audiobooks, I loved Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. It's kind of a look at his entire life, and he's just got so many cool insights.
I'm writing this down now.
Yeah.
Green lights.
Green lights, baby. We're looking for green lights in life, and he's breaking it down for you. So I highly recommend that. And then, are you into podcasts, G?
I am.
What are you hot on this summer?
So it's a few. I have to represent. There are a group of 5 young ladies that are in sports, but they go as starter 5, and it's magnificent. For a younger professional in athletics, it gives a really good insight to how they think, and even though I'm older, I still get a lot of stuff from them. I've listened to the Scam Goddess. It's interesting. So she talks about different scams that are going on and different businesses that people don't know about it, like Ponzi schemes, that stuff. And it's always interesting hearing how the criminal mind works and thinks. And then if it's out there and it's interesting, I'll check it out. So those are the 2 that I listen to right now. But I'm always listening, waiting to hear something else.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check those out. Because Terry always sends them to me, the Yahoo Sports college football guys. I think it's like Pete Thamel, Pat Ford, and a couple others. That's a pretty good one. And I've been kind of more into like the finance area and investing.
Right.
So I've been listening to a couple podcasts in that space, but I got to get into the thrillers, kind of, the crime. Those are always pretty riveting listens.
Yeah, I used to listen to Serial quite a bit.
Classic.
But I've kind of fallen off from that. But going on a road trip this weekend, so gives me a chance to kind of listen to all of those things.
Absolutely, man. No doubt. Dude, this has been an awesome conversation. I knew it would be great.
No doubt.
It took us a while to get it done, but I'm excited to share it, and we'll have plenty more opportunities in the future to record more, man. Any final words of wisdom?
One thing, I say this all the time, but especially with everything that's happened in 2020 and kind of re-happening again with 2021 is life is short. Make love to the moment, and for that means to me more than anything is really embrace life as a whole. Don't let anything be taken for granted, because tomorrow truly isn't promised. Really take advantage of it and go out there and live your life to the fullest.
Boom. That's a mic drop moment right there, baby. I love it. Be where your feet are, just like the book that you said. George, right. You're awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Until next time, this is Derek out.